All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And if that was done correctly, you should all see the first slide in our slide deck here. And I'm going to let Dylan take this on.
Great, thanks, Linda. So hi, everyone. My name is Dylan Fenton. I'm the Instructional Technology Project Leader at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. Most of you are probably familiar with Wharton, but just to give you a little bit of background, we're located in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We have 4 degree programs, a large undergraduate program with close to 20 concentrations for students. We have our flagship MBA program. We also have an executive MBA program for mid-career professionals, and we have a smaller doctoral program. So something to understand about Wharton is that we have a really heavy team-based curriculum at our school. A lot of our teaching is focused on group work and projects that students do, really to prepare them to succeed in their workplaces after graduating and to reach their long-term goals. We know that collaboration skills are really, really important to do that. So we do a lot of focusing on that. But with that group work also comes the need for professors to have a way to evaluate what's going on within those groups. And so a lot of our professors have had different ways to do this in the past. They've used paper-based surveys where students are evaluating one another. We've had them use third-party tools like SurveyMonkey, and we even had our own homegrown system that's about 20 years old now for students to evaluate one another. But really, we wanted something that was updated, that was a really seamless experience for students. And we wanted something that could read already existing groups that we had created in Canvas. We wanted a cleaner user interface for students. And we wanted something that really tightly integrated with our existing LMS. And we found all those things with Feedback Fruits. So the first thing that really turned us on to Feedback Fruits was the group member evaluation tool, which we piloted last spring to a lot of success. We had about 20 different faculty use it, and hundreds of students were able to successfully use that tool to give each other evaluations. But that experience with that tool really gave us a springboard to look at other Feedback Fruit tools and look at other ways that we could use the Feedback Fruit tools to drive peer-to-peer interaction, which is how we kind of came upon the peer review tool, where we found a very good use case for it at a very large scale, which I'll let Linda talk about a little bit more.
Thanks, Dylan. Like many institutions across the world, when COVID-19 hit, a lot of things changed for us. And one of the things that changed was most of our students engage in trip courses, and many students were planning on taking trip courses. This is true across all of our degree programs during spring break of 2019, in March of 2019. Needless to say, all of those trips were canceled. And so our school needed to come up with a replacement for this requirement for most of our students, some of whom would be graduating at the end of the year. And what was developed was a new course that launched in March, right after we returned from spring break, in a fully remote format. And this new half-term credit course, Management 198/799, a cross-listed course that was offered across all of our degree programs, was on epidemics, natural disasters, and geopolitics, managing global business and financial uncertainty. I was the lead instructional designer for this course, and I helped the lead faculty member, Professor Moro Guion, develop the course for remote instruction. The enrollment, as I said, was open to students from across all Wharton degree programs, and was eventually opened to both undergraduates and grad students from across the University of Pennsylvania. In total, we had about 2,000 registered students and about 700 auditors taking this course. The content of the course involved presentations from 17 Wharton faculty members over the 6 weeks of class. They gave presentations on a wide range of topics, including COVID-19's evolution a pandemic, leadership issues, uncertainty in global business supply chains, US-China relations, emotional contagion, bioethics, and many other topics related to COVID-19 epidemics and global business. Now, this course is the largest course ever taught at Wharton. By far the largest course ever taught in Wharton. There were 2,000 students in total, as I said. They were about 1,100 of them were undergraduates. About 600 were full-time MBA students, the flagship MBA program that Dylan mentioned, as well as students from other graduate programs across the University of Pennsylvania, and about 300 executive MBA students. The coursework involved live 3-hour class sessions given each week. These were typically attended by between 1,000 and 1,400 students. Everyone else watched recordings live that were available the next day. Weekly classwork also included readings, quizzes, video interviews, and discussion board contributions. The major project for the course, which is what I'm going to be talking more about now, was a team paper with peer review, and collectively this counted for about 40% of the final grade for the course, 30% for the group's performance on the assignment, and then 10% for completing the peer review. And student peer evaluations of each other's work contributed to the grades that students earned for this assignment. Despite the challenges posed by using peer review on a group paper for this class size, again, 2,000 students across more than 500 groups, Professor Gyan was really committed to using peer learning, both through the group collaboration on the team paper and also peer review for the evaluation of the paper. So we really needed a way to make this happen. And our requirements, our courseware support team's requirements included being able to set multiple due dates for various assignment milestones, including group submission of the assignment, when the peer reviews would be assigned, and a due date for communicating to students when the peer feedback was due. We also needed a way to be able to customize the peer review evaluation rubric according to the faculty member's guidelines. So he had really specific guidelines about what kind of feedback he wanted students to be giving during the peer review process, and we needed a way to be able to craft that as part of the students' learning activity for this assessment. We also needed to be able to export the peer review criterion data, so how students evaluated each other's work, in order to facilitate the teaching team's ability to grade this assignment. And overall, we really wanted a tool that would be really easy for students to use to minimize the kind of support that we might have for 2,000 students working on this assignment. We did not want to be dealing with questions that might come up from that number of students, if at all possible. So to make this happen, we had initially planned to use Canvas's native peer review tool, but we also looked at Feedback Fruit's peer review tool because we were in the process of piloting the group member evaluation. And when Dylan showed this to me, I immediately saw how Feedback Fruit's peer review tool offered really many advantages over Canvas's native peer review tool. In particular, Feedback Fruits offered the support for multiple deadlines that we were looking for. It offered for students a clear set of steps for being able to find and complete the peer review. It allowed the ability to export the data of students' peer reviews without having to develop something internally to be able to export that peer review rubric data via API. And finally, it also allowed students the ability to really easily return to the peer review. Canvas's native peer review tool assumes that once students finish the peer review, that's it, they're not going to want to go back to it. But one of the things that we found in using peer review in classes is that students do often want to return. They rethink the feedback that they had, they want to check, they want to double check, and Feedback Fruits allowed a really simple path to be able to make that happen. So what we did, we created 3 separate assignments, one for each cohort of students. Undergraduates, there were 1,100 undergraduates, one for MBA students and graduate students from across the university, and which accounted for about 600 students, and then the executive MBA students. We configured those 3 assignments to work with Canvas groups. There was a group set for each cohort of students. We were able to customize the peer review criteria, and you can see here that that students were asked to evaluate the group submission based on 4 different questions, and they had a scale rating that they were able to do for each of those 4 questions. And then we configured the multiple deadlines for each stage of this assignment. And the most delightful thing from my perspective was that we were able to create the assignment once and then easily copy that with all of the set configurations for the second and third assignments. So overall, how did it go? Overall, it was an unqualified success. Well, slightly qualified success. It was overall a success. The student support was really minimal. That was one of our big concerns. We had a very small number of students who were not the ones who had submitted the assignment on behalf of their group, who were a little bit confused about where to go to complete the peer review, but that was a very small number. So we were delighted by the small footprint of student support that this required. We were able to relatively easily export the data from the peer review. Professor Guion used that exported peer review data to determine the grades both for the assignment, the team paper assignment, and also the course overall. We did experience some load issues, in particular with the largest assignment. So this is the undergraduate assignment that had 1,100 students. There were a couple of students who had problems when they tried to enter the assignment due to these load issues, but that was a very, very small number, and usually reloading the assignment worked for them. The load issues that we experienced primarily affected our abilities to export the data, and here the Feedback Fruits support team was really a great help. And these were load issues that from our perspective were really easy to overcome, and we had, given the size and the scope of this class, this was by far not the only place where we had experienced load issues with Canvas and other learning tools. So overall, we were really delighted about how it went, and really look forward to being able to recommend and use this tool again in the future. And I'd love to hear your questions.
Linda, Dylan, thanks so much for this great presentation. Really appreciate it.
We can take a question from John. Linda, if you can share a few examples of what students were asked to review and how. Perhaps a few examples of the criteria in the rubric.
Yep. So I'll return to this slide, and they were given 4 questions to answer, 4 rubric criteria for their peer review. They had to indicate the relevance of the chosen group topic to COVID-19, and that students evaluated on a 1 to 5 basis, so a scale of 1 to 5. They had to evaluate the quality of the underlying research for this team research paper, from poor quality to superb quality. And again, this was a scale rating, in this case from 1 to 10. They were asked to evaluate the quality of the arguments that the group made, again on a scale of 1 to 10, from poor quality to superb quality. And then they were asked to evaluate the quality of the conclusions, and that was another scale rating on a scale of from poor quality to superb quality on a 1 to 5 scale. We spent a lot of time talking with the faculty about whether Professor Guion wanted students to give open-ended feedback. And we talked a lot about the pros and cons of doing that. And his concern, we ultimately did not include open-ended feedback in this peer review assignment. And the reason for that was, with the number of students, again, 2,000 students overall, he was concerned about not being able to review all of that open-ended feedback before students saw it, and he was concerned about whether students might be giving feedback that might be not what he wanted them to be saying. And with the very tight time frame and the large number of students, he felt that the safer path was to stick with the scale feedback to give them.
Thank you, Linda. I see that John also appreciated the answer.
Yeah. We have a question from Matt from UCI. Did you survey the students after the course to learn more about the experience of feedback routes and the peer review tool?
That is a great question. And I have to acknowledge that we did not survey the students. We were really cognizant of how much students were being asked to do in this particular course. Students were not, they were not aware that we were using a new tool with them. And the logistics of having them do one more thing at the very, very, very end of the semester. Again, this was completing this was the last thing that we had done, the last thing that was asked of students to do during the class. And it was determined that that asking students to complete that survey was more than what we wanted to ask students to be doing in the middle of May in the COVID-19 semester.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that I think that the lack of student issues that we saw was a form of feedback. If students were really having difficulty with this tool in a 2,000 person course, we sure would have heard about it, yeah. And we didn't. And so we could see that for students, this was easy to navigate. It was easy to complete. And there weren't many people who did not complete it. And so we're kind of operating under the assumption that it was successful for students.
Thank you, Dylan. I want to second everything that Dylan just said there. I worked closely with the faculty member and the team of TAs, and any place where there were student questions about just about anything was escalated up to us, and this was an area we didn't hear about.
Right, we have time for one more question, Linda, if that's okay with you. Matt had a follow-up question. If you also used the Feedback Fruits team evaluation tool in this course.
We did not use the Feedback Fruits team evaluation tool in this course. This was something that was brought up to the faculty member as a possibility, and students were allowed to choose their own groups, again, with 2,000 students, 3 cohorts of students, and over 500 groups. That was also a challenge, but the faculty member was really cognizant about asking students to do too much, and so that was not something that we used here. But we have used this, as Dylan said earlier, we have used the group member evaluation tool in many other classes during our spring 2020 pilot. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. Hey, we see a lot more questions coming in. Also, being conscious of time, I would like to give the stage to Ananda. In the meantime, we will basically try to answer the questions best as possible. And if you have any more questions, please keep them coming. Yeah, Ananda.